So today's word is synergy, right? Why is synergy and team composition so important? Well, when we talk about team composition, right, we're talking about comps that blend well together, pairing characters that, that can follow up on top of each other. Being able to follow up on another teammate's play allows you to win more fights. Winning more fights leads to you winning more rounds. Winning more rounds wins matches. Winning more matches leads to you ranking up. And if you can do that consistently, if you can consistently pick characters that mesh well together, this will be a benefit. It's just a positive, right? But when we think of synergy, right, what are we thinking of, right? This is for like my mid to low rank players. What are we thinking of? Are we thinking of just team ups? Because there's team ups in this game that personally I think the characters don't synergize at all, like whatsoever. For example, Captain America and Bucky. There's no synergy there. Okay, it's just there. Also, Vibrant Vitality with Mantis, Loki, and Groot. These three characters don't have no kind of synergy whatsoever. They have great healing. Mantis boosts the healing. She boosts Loki runes, and she also gives Groot, and that's like a little healing wall. But outside of that, there's no follow-up potential on each other. Outside of just positioning, but ult-wise, they don't really follow up on each other like that. Cool team up. Not much you can really mesh well when it comes to actually trying to win a fight on the offensive side, right? Defensively, they're great, but offensively, what do you get out of it? But then let's think of, team ups that aren't necessarily, or character combinations that aren't necessarily team ups, right? So one of my favorites, one of the more basic ones is Groot and Moon Knight. We all know Groot, what does his ultimate do? Okay, you throw his ult out, it drags people to a center point, and they're all stuck in that point unless they get cleansed or unless someone pops like an ult or something like that. They're stuck in that point and they're taking damage, right? You can follow up, simply put with it. There's a couple of DPS ults you can follow up with that. Blade with his 1,000 cuts ult, right? They're all stuck in one spot. Easy damage for his ultimate. You can follow up on it very easily. Elsa Bloodstone does a whole lot of damage to her ultimate. Moon Knight is a very popular, ult combo with Groot. They're all stuck in one spot. You drop Moon Knight's ultimate on top of it. That damage is going to be consistently hitting them in the center. That's an easy win. That's an easy team. That's easy. Picks. You win that's an easy team fight to win. So when we're thinking of synergy, right? When we're thinking of characters that blend well together, I want you to think more so not in the idea of a team up, but think in the way of how do their kits blend. The reason why characters like White Fox, Jeff the Land Shark, Ultron work very well with dive comps, right? Jeff has a lot of mobility. His bubbles, allow for passive healing. He can heal himself. He has multiple ways to self-sustain, but he can also dive into the back line. Not necessarily dive himself like Season 0 Jeff, but kind of join, someone like a Magic, someone like a Psylocke, and keep them up, right? That they don't have a team up, but that synergy they have, that they mesh well, their play styles mesh well. White Fox, you jump in with the Magic. You're helping Magic stay up. You're helping Daredevil stay up. They don't have a team up, but their play styles mesh well. Now, our characters, when we think of characters, and this happens a whole bunch, people will pick whatever characters they feel like. Now, do you think a character like Hawkeye and White Fox would mesh well together? No. Do you think a character like White Fox and, for example, a duelist Deadpool will work great together? And I know someone's gonna be like, well, duelist Deadpool, you could dive into the backline with him. Most of y'all ain't that good on Deadpool. Do you think a hybrid DPS like White Fox would work great with Black Widow? Not really. Not necessarily. Because you can't really utilize his White Fox whole kit because Black Widow's probably going to be playing up in a corner somewhere. Is White Fox and Iron Man going to blend well? No. But when you mesh somebody like, let's say Mantis, and you mesh her, you decide to combo her with Hawkeye, you're giving them damage boost. You combo Mantis with Black Widow. You combo Mantis with another poke character like Phoenix, like Namor, Hela. You're helping them do more damage. They're getting more headshot damage now. Storm blends well with a lot of people. She loves playing with poke characters. She can play with brawl characters too. It's kind of hard for Storm to play with dive characters because she's not really, she doesn't really have that much mobility to kind of fly in and out like that. But she provides a massive damage boost. So now you have a Storm on your team. You have a Mantis. Maybe you have like a Hawkeye or something like that. Maybe you have a Hela. Everyone's getting damage boosted. That's meshing well together. You're helping each other get kills way easier, right? That's what you want to think about. What character can I pick to help my team win more fights? And sometimes there might not always be synergy. Like, Rocket, for example, he might not necessarily have like, synergy with anybody, but he just works well. How does he work well? He works great with teams that play on top of each other. Let's say your front line is, Doctor Strange, Emma Frost. They're naturally going to be right in front of the team. Emma Frost isn't necessarily going to be diving. Doctor Strange isn't necessarily going to be taking an off angle and diving like a Venom, right? Then you might have a character like, Winter Soldier. You might have a character like Phoenix. They're going, naturally going to be playing like, right in front of you. Maybe you have a Mr. Fantastic, right? They have a team up. Well, even before the team up, I thought it was pretty good. But since everyone's playing right on top of each other, positioning-wise, guess what? Rocket, he's able to get a lot of value with his heals because he can shoot his orbs. His orb is going to hit everyone. It's going to be consistent heals. Character like Luna, she has her clap. It makes it a little bit easier. But if no one's not necessarily diving, I like, Luna being able to throw a snowflake on a dive, right? So let's say I have like a Venom on my team, right? Or an Angela maybe. Or maybe I have like, a diver like Magic, maybe a Daredevil, for example. Maybe a Star-Lord, right? I like to throw Snowflake on them because now they can sit there when we're in a team fight. I can still heal, one of my tanks. I can still heal whoever I need to heal. But since they're off diving, I don't necessarily have to worry about, directly healing them. They can still stay up as like, we're in a nice team fight. Keep in mind, just because you have Snowflake, you need to make sure your team's, actively taking damage so you can get value out of it. You can't just have Snowflake and no one takes damage and you just die anyway. Just keep that in mind because that'd be happening a whole bunch. But it's important because a lot of times, a lot of matches are lost because, you'll have someone pick an Angela, then you have someone pick Penny Parker. So off top, your tanks aren't really matching up. They have no synergy, right? Penny, she has, she's more so like an area control. Angela, she's going to be kind of diving, repositioning people. And you can be like, well, Angela can tackle people into the Penny nest. How many good Angelas are out there doing that? How many good Penny Parkers are actually out there placing their nest right? Let's be consistent. Now, let's say, you have an Angela and you have an Emma Frost. You have an Angela and you have a Groot. You reposition somebody into your team, Groot walls it off. Guess what? They're taking damage from getting tackled. Now Groot, he throws up his Ironwood wall. Now your team, maybe you have someone like a Mr. Fantastic. Maybe you have a Bucky. Maybe you have someone like an Elsa that could do a lot of burst damage. And now they can clean up that kill easily. All right? Maybe you have a Punisher. He whips out the shotgun after Angela tackles him. Boom. They're done. Maybe you have a Wolverine that sits there and tackles them again. So they got hit by Angela. Now they're getting hit by Wolverine. They're CC'd. They're out of the picture. That's synergy. That's having nice, good chemistry. That's being able to layer your offense, right? And basketball, we talk about layering your offense. You can layer your offense that way through your team. Psylocke, for example, right? I had a team. We had a Psylocke, we had a Black Panther, and we had a Spider-Man. So those three, they work very well together. Want to know why? Because they surround the enemy team very well. Psylocke can go invisible. She has range projectile advantage. She has a lot of mobility, so she can shoot from range. And she can close the gap and get out the way if she needs to. Spider-Man can close the gap. Has a lot of mobility, hard to hit. Black Panther can close the gap, has a lot of mobility, hard to hit. So now you have 3 DPS. They're all playing very aggressive. They're all targeting squishies. They're targeting the back line. The enemy team is having a hard time trying to deal with them because they all have, a lot of mobility. So they're able to cause a lot of chaos together, right? They're able to cause a lot of chaos. The supports can't really, don't really have any target pressure on who to heal. The DPS are having a hard time because now the tanks are collapsing in. Everyone's collapsing on each other. It's a bunch of chaos. You got Black Panther dashing across your screen. You see Spider-Man swinging across your screen. You're getting grabbed, uppercut, and he's swinging off. You turn around after all your cooldowns are done. Now you gotta deal with Psylocke shooting you, and it's just wash, rinse, repeat. Now you gotta deal with the enemy team. Maybe the enemy team has a Magneto, right? Now he's just getting cleanup kills. Maybe maybe they have an Emma. Maybe they have an Angela, right? Now, and then maybe they got a Venom, and he won't die. They're running full blown dive. That's being able to layer. That's that synergy, right? None of those characters have any kind of team up potential, like any actual team ups together. But when they work together, they're able to help your team win a lot more fights, and that's important. A lot of people need to understand that, and here's the problem, right? Here's why in Marvel Rivals, why we have so many issues with team comps, right? Because it's not just about whether 2-2-2 is the best, or triple tank or triple support, or whatever the case may be is the best, right? It's less about that. It's more so because people just don't know enough characters. So in order for you to even be able to conceptualize and be able to execute, being able to pair yourself well with another character, you have to be able to know how to play multiple characters. Now, I talked about this a little bit in my other video, and I talked about a little bit in a short, but you don't necessarily need to have a character at someone was like, oh, do I need to have my character like Centurion or Captain? Just learn the fundamentals. Okay, you can have a Lord character and still suck. Lord icons in this game is a time played stat and not a skill stat. All right, if it was an actual skill stat, okay, that's one thing, but it's just a time played stat, so it really means nothing. You would think, now on paper, it would be like, oh, okay, well, since they have a lot of time played on this character, since they invested 15, 20 hours, you would hope they would be good on the character. But then you find out they're just a freaking one trick, so it's just like, oh, okay. So they only played that character and they suck at the character anyway, but it's cool, I guess. All right. Got a little off topic, I'm sorry. But just understanding how to play multiple characters, you'll be able to sit there and be like, huh, okay, you know what? Because, okay, so let me set the scene, right? Let's say you're in comp. Okay, someone selects Doctor Strange. You see an Invis. Then you see someone pick, Black Widow, not Black Widow, Magic. So you're like, oh, okay. So, Doctor Strange, he has a team with Invis. He has that pool. Magic, okay, she's going to be diving. She has a team with Doctor Strange. Okay, so what can I do? What character can I pick to kind of help follow up on that, right? Maybe a character like Moon Knight. When Magic hits, her team up ability on, two squishies on, to whoever, they're going to be stuck together for a little bit. You throw, Moon Knight's, little damage combo, Unk on the ground, right next to the people, next to the two people who are linked together. You start throwing, his auto attack. It's a lot of burst damage. Magic, she's going to be attacking whoever. You're getting a lot of cleanup. No team up necessarily between Moon Knight and Magic, but a lot of synergy because of the play style that's happening. She's diving. Moon Knight can flank. She, binds whoever. He does a lot of burst damage. You're making Magic's job a lot easier because now she doesn't have to worry about hitting every single combo in the book just to get a kill. Now she can just hit, maybe just one combo, and you guys are securing picks. That's the kind of mindset you need to have. There's a lot of goofy. People will sit here, run Wolverine, then run Namor, then they'll have a freaking tank like god dang I don't know, they'll have a Thor and a Ben Grimm. There's no what can you do? Unless the enemy team is stupid, right? This all okay. I should have prefaced this at the beginning of the video. This is all under the assumption that the enemy team is equal to your team. Okay, if you're just steamrolling, you guys can run whatever. You can run freaking 6 DPS characters and it just won't matter. If the enemy team is stupid, it doesn't matter. You're gonna steamroll them, right? So your comp won't matter. Cases like that, it won't matter. But when the team is equal to yours, there's not necessarily a huge skill gap between, your team and theirs. What's going to take you to the next step, right? Maybe you have better, slightly better mechanical skill that might separate you just a little bit. But what's also going to create that separation is having those characters that blend well together. So maybe they're equal, right? Both teams are equal, skill range, right? You guys, both, let's say, they're both teams are, they got, a couple, guys are in Grandmaster, right? You got two teams, Grandmasters and everything like that. roughly around the same mechanical skill. Maybe they got similar IQ levels, you know, similar win rates. What's going to separate you guys is who's able to play more efficiently and follow up with their character, abilities, right? So playing a character like Angela, the problem that I consistently run into with Angela, you know, I'll execute her tackle, I'll grab someone, I'll bring her to the enemy team, or into my team, I should say, away from their team, but no one follows up because I have a Hela, because I have some kind of range character, and for some reason they can't aim at somebody at point blank range in their face. But when I have someone like an Iron Fist, when I have someone like a Winter Soldier, I have a character like Rogue, maybe a character like Emma, you know, maybe someone like, you know, a Daredevil, maybe a White Fox who can, you know, jump onto them, maybe an Invis who can even zone them in, like, you know, tighter, you know, Vortex pull them back so they can't escape. Now we're getting picks. Now we're getting value. So instead of it trying to be like, you know, gameplay mechanics, you know, my aim versus your aim, now it's going to be, okay, we're playing chess now. All right, well, my team blends better than yours. You know, maybe Hulk and Hela, you know, let's see, the other team has like, you know, Hulk and, you know, they in Hela on their team, right? Hulk and Hela don't necessarily work that well together. I mean, yeah, you can win. I'm not saying you can't win. You know, Hulk, he's going to be distracting you. Hela, she can probably be on high ground. But let's say, you know, you have, you know, a character like Hulk and you're meshing with a brawler like, you know, Daredevil, like Iron Fist. He's jumping up in there, brawling right with him. You know, now you're in the team's face. That works a little bit better because your team is going to be concentrated in one spot. And since your team is going to be more concentrated, it makes it easier for your supports to win. One of the things I always say on this channel is don't stress out your supports. The more you stress out your supports, the less likely you are going to win. If your supports have an easy time healing you, it's going to be a good time. That's why I'm not a big fan of having multiple flyers on the team, unless it's like an Iron Man that has high mobility, or, you know, like Angela or somebody like, I guess Human Torch has a little bit mobility. But if they're not able to get to like a health pack quick, I'm not a fan of flyers like that, because, you know, you'll have an Iron Man or a Storm. And let's say, you know, there's a lot of Iron Man players that just sit up in the air for the enemy team to shoot them out the air, right? You know, Storm doesn't have like the most mobility in the game. So let's say, like, you know, you have an Iron Man or a Storm, and then your team is like, you know, running like a full like dive comp. They had like, you know, you have like a Venom and a Cap, maybe the other characters like a Psylocke. So now you have an Iron Man up in the air, but then the enemy team, they decide to run like, you know, some kind of anti-dive, but they're also sitting there, you know, they're able to shoot your Iron Man at the same time. Maybe they have like a range character up in there somewhere. Now they're shooting your Iron Man, so you have to look up to try to heal Iron Man, but then now your team, your divers, they're getting hard countered. They're getting, you know, they're getting dealt with. They're getting focused. So like your attention split. It doesn't mesh well. Now, if you're an Iron Man with somebody else that can also, like, you know, play, you know, some kind of like brawl, some kind of dive, maybe some kind of range that's all in front of you, you can heal everybody a lot easier. You're also, and vice versa, if you want to win more matches, you want to cause as much chaos for the supports. You want to make the support's job super hard. Pick characters that are going to be able to do that. Blade, I learned this season, Blade terrorizes supports. He terrorizes supports. Because once you get your lifesteal stacks going, you're shredding somebody. That lifesteal is going, that damage is going, your team's starting to steamroll. Oh, do not let the support have to sit there and reload. Don't let it be a Rocket. Don't let it be a Jeff. Don't let it be someone that gotta reload out of nowhere. As soon as they reload, guess what? They're dead. And guess who's next? Exactly. Now you're combining, you know, you got Blade. You combine him with somebody like, you know, a Ben Grimm that's in the team's grill, throwing haymakers, causing a lot of disruption. You know, Ben, he runs, tackles, slams the ground, does a knock up. You got Blade up in there just doing all kinds of burst damage. Since Ben Grimm did his knock up, right? He has like that grounded ability where people can't use any of like their mobility utility, and like their movement utility. Now Blade is free. He's allowed to just shred. You know, Spider-Man can't swing. Invis can't jump. Angela can't fly away as easily, right? and you got a blade on, you got a black man on your back. That's a cop worst nightmare. Okay, I'm being funny, y'all. Okay, I got to throw my jokes in here and there. But just understand that, right? It's hard, I know, but if you don't see, the reason why I get it is because I flex, right? Maybe to my own detriment. Because next season, look, and I found, Black Cat's a DPS. I'm in my DPS season next. Look, in a couple days, I'm only playing DPS. I might, flex to, I'll probably flex to support, here and I'll flex to tank here, and I'm not, I ain't gonna always just not play, you know what I'm saying? But 90% of my games next season is gonna be me on DPS. All right, so be ready. But guess what? I know multiple DPS characters. I know, hey, you know what? A lot of people don't realize, how well, a Punisher works with a lot of comps. A lot of people still don't realize how much value Scarlet Witch. Look, I know Scarlet Witch, I know she's, you just click and point, but she causes a lot of havoc if you know how to play her right. If you have a Scarlet Witch on your team, and you have someone that's also diving like a Daredevil, and your Scarlet Witch decides to flank with your Daredevil, or you have a Scarlet Witch that flanks, that you have like a dive team like a Captain America, and your Scarlet Witch goes with you, do you know how much chaos that causes? Because you got one person that's, punching you, then you got Scarlet Witch who's just literally not missing. She can stun and all that. Maybe it's a magic, maybe it's somebody else. She causes a lot of havoc. Now, if you're just a Scarlet Witch player that only shoots the enemy tank, then I don't know what to tell you. Right, characters like Spider-Man and Venom, they work well together. Technically, they did have a team up way back when, but now they don't. But they still work really good together, though. Venom dies, he burns cooldowns. Now Spider-Man's allowed to go up in there. Cloak and Dagger has no bubble. Invis has no jump because Venom burnt right through it. Then you have like a magic that follows up also on top of that. I mean, Spider-Man just works well with any kind of dive character, though, honestly. As long that's why anytime I do have a Spider-Man player on my team, I like to play Angela. And what I'll do mindset-wise, if I'm playing like a dive tank, mindset-wise, what I'm doing, I'm diving to force the enemy to burn their cooldowns. So, I'm looking to burn, Luna Freeze, Mantis Sleep, right? I'm looking to, to burn through, Cloak and Dagger's Fade, their bubble, looking to burn Loki runes, that kind of stuff, right? So I can go in, cause a bunch of havoc. Then when Spider-Man decides to follow up, they don't really have much to counter. That's synergy. No team ups, right? Also on Angela, I can zone people into one spot, crowd control. Spider-Man can come in. It's easier for, I do a little bit of damage. I throw my spear, slam. Spider-Man can come in, do his ult. Now we just got a nice, little 4-piece, maybe even a team wipe. That's value. A lot of people are like, oh, well, 2 ults to kill a team, blah, 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 blah. With how powerful support ults are in this game, and with how important it is to win certain areas on, convoy, especially when, you're further, when your team is pushing the convoy and you're towards the end, but the enemy team starts gaining momentum and it's taking you forever. Your spawn gets further and further. Like on Clintar, right? That little midsection, I like combining ults together the closer we get to the next spawn, because our spawn room is so far back. So it's important that we use our ults to secure, positioning and secure fights, so we can get to that next little checkpoint. Because I've had people be like, oh, I don't like wasting two ultimates just to win a fight. Well, okay, would you rather us just use one ultimate and not necessarily win a fight? Because Angela ult isn't necessarily gonna wipe a team. She doesn't do a crazy amount of burst damage like that. I mean, she can get picks, don't get me wrong, but it's not comparable to someone like Spider-Man, who can get a bunch of picks, especially if the team's already zoned or stunned, right? So you just combine those two, just guarantees it, and now you win the point. I'll take that. I'll take it. Some people don't agree with it, but I'll take that. So just think of it that way, man. So when you go into your matches, just think of characters that just really mesh well together. And it's a very nuanced thing, because there's so many different kinds of characters in this game that, different combinations. I could sit here all day and be like, oh yeah, well, Daredevil and, for example, who was another character I really like playing with? Daredevil and Captain America. terrorize supports. Oh my goodness. Because Captain America just act like he can't die. And Daredevil, if you have a good Daredevil player, he just does so much burst damage still. It's just like, god dang. It's annoying. Another interesting little team comp is, Penny Parker and Winter Soldier. Why is that? Penny Parker, she has her nest, she has her bombs everywhere. Winter Soldier can hook somebody, punch him, and if he's in the nest, and now you got the mines, boom, they blow up, they're dead. That simple. Winter Soldier isn't necessarily going to be hard flanking. He's normally going to be playing, right by the tanks. So, having a Penny, maybe having a Groot, having an Emma, he hooks somebody. Emma goes into diamond form, choke slams. He shoots his gun. Boom. Dead. So maybe you don't even have to necessarily use an ult, but you're just using your abilities together to, sit there and win fights. You pull a tank, you pull a key support, you pull someone that has ult. Like one of my favorite things I like to do, and normally if I'm on Angela, I try to do it, but you can also do it on Emma Frost. If a cloak and dagger ults, I like to choke slam them. Like once they're finished, I like to choke slam them, kick them out of it. And hopefully if I have another character on my team, someone like a Hela that can stun, a Phoenix that can kind of stun, characters of that nature, you can kind of burst the cloak and dagger, out of their ultimate, kick them out of their ultimate, then burst them, then you end their ultimate. I've been able to do that a couple times. Another nice little combination with, you won't really see this too often, but Penny and Hawkeye work really good together. I learned this in a QP match when I was joking around Hawkeye. Every time Penny webbed somebody, I was just like, wait, she webbed somebody, they're just standing still. So I just told her, hey, just keep on spamming your webs. Every time she spammed her web, it was a free headshot. Free damage, free picks. That easy. Now, how many great Hawkeye players are you going to be finding in mid-rank? How many Penny players are you going to be finding in mid-rank that are going to be on that timing? Not too many. But when it does happen, because you're able to flex, you understand those fundamentals, you're able to identify, be like, this might work. And your team wins off it, and maybe you guys don't even realize that's why you're winning. But that happens. So just keep that in mind whenever you're going into your matches, just trying to figure out ways to win. Team comp and team synergy is important. There's not necessarily, I know 2-2-2 is the ideal comp, but yes, one single solo tank triple DPS can work, right? If you have the right combination of characters. Triple support can work if you have the right combination of supports. I said this in a different video. I like having an Ultron. I like having a Mantis, right? And I like having, maybe a Loki involved, maybe a Luna involved. Because, Mantis and Ultron especially, they're going to be just adding more damage. Ultron can help the dive out. He can put his drones on the dive. He can poke the backline with how his laser works. So now Ultron can poke the backline while someone's already on top of the backline diving. So the supports can't even shoot the Ultron because he's too far out of position to deal with. And then you have a Psylocke, you have a Magic, you have, a Venom, you have a Cap on top of you. You're trying to deal with him, but you're also getting shot by Ultron, who's, 50 meters away. He's 30, 50 meters away. You can't shoot him. There's synergy right there. No team up needed. IQ and game sense. All right. So keep that in mind whenever you guys are in your matches, man. All right. But if you enjoyed this video, if you think this was very insightful, I know it wasn't, I didn't plan on making this video. I planned on it, but I didn't know exactly how I wanted to go about it because I can be here for a whole hour talking about different team combos, team combos, right? But just understand, it's important to pick characters that layer well into each other, right? Doctor Strange can follow up really good with, Emma Frost. Pick characters that follow up very well together, whether it be ability-wise or ult-wise, all right? So, if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like down below. I appreciate you guys. And I know they dropped the patch notes and everything, the update balancing notes. I'll probably, I don't know if I'll do a video on that. I don't know, because you can kind of just look it and read it yourself. Unless you care that much about my opinion, I don't know. But a lot of my stuff when it comes to balance updates, I just have to see the update and then I can kind of make a judgment call. But we'll see. Anyways, you guys have a good night and I'll see you guys in the next video, man.